Today is a very sad anniversary. This day marks the 3rd anniversary of the passing of my beloved Chihuahua, Sam, who was around 14 years old. And it's interesting how I came into contact with this dog. He was my last connection to Reno, Nevada, where I had lived for 26 years before I had to move. Anyway, I had noticed that my other dog, Tony, was playing with this dog that kept coming over. And for about 3 days, they'd be out there playing, and I tried to get close to this little dog, and he wouldn't let me near him. And then one time I put some food out there for him, and he ate that, or he didn't eat that. I put it out right in front of this crate that he found some shade in. And usually what he would do is he'd run across the alley behind the triplex, and he stayed in an abandoned house. But one day I saw him in this crate where my landlord used to have a freezer, and I guess it was shady there for this little dog. And so he would growl at me when I tried to feed him. So I left the food out. I left some water out for him. And then I went to work in summer school, which is what I did in the summer of 2005. So this was around July 9th, and it was really hot weather. It was over 100 degrees, and this poor little dog was just a bag of bones. So I left that food out, and then I left, and then I came back, and all the food was gone, and the water looked like that had been drank too. And this neighbor that I had, who was in the same triplex as me, she said, have you seen that Chihuahua? And I said no, because he wasn't in that crate anymore. And I said no. I said, but if I can tame him, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep him. And so that was that. So I took the bowl, I brought it back in the house, and was going about my business with my other dog. And then a few minutes later, I go and I open the front door, and there that dog was. He was right there in front of the door, and he came crawling in. He heard me. He heard me say that I would keep him. But he wouldn't let me touch him. He wouldn't let me go near him. He kept growling at me every time he went near. And he jumped up on my bed, and he was there, and I tried to get him, to come to me, and he wouldn't come to me. So he wanted to be there, but he didn't quite trust me. So that was that. And then probably 2 or 3 hours later, I was planning to take Tony for his walk. So I said, Tony, do you want to go for a walk? And then this dog came tearing in there, this stray, jumping up and down. Oh, he was so happy. He let me pet him, everything. Oh my gosh, he wanted to go. And I didn't have a leash for him then. So eventually I got a harness for him and all that. But that was the beginning of a 12-year relationship that I had with this dog. And he was a great companion when I was going through so much stuff, down there in Nevada with the job and with the neighbors having died and things like this. And eventually he and Tony came with me to Medford, Oregon, which is where I grew up. And then when Tony passed, he passed about 6 months after we came back up here. And I'll never forget that, when I had to have him put to sleep. And Sam knew, he just knew that his friend Tony had died. And those big tears welled up in his eyes. He knew, and he was crying about it because he knew I was sad too. And it was really sad. And then about 8 months later, I got Duffy, and I still have Duffy. And he and Duffy got along better than he and Tony did. And they were great friends. And then about 2014, I had some issues, or I found that Sam was having trouble breathing. So I took him in to the vet, and they diagnosed him as having a heart murmur, and then he probably had CHF. And so he had a trio of pills that he had to take. And so I gave that to him, and he was almost like a puppy again. He was on the verge of just about dying. And that, he took those for 3.5 years. Exactly 3.5 years later, it got to the point where he couldn't breathe anymore. And so I had to make the decision to take him in and have him put to sleep. This is my favorite picture of him, by the way. And so I took him to the emergency thing, and they had to euthanize him. And then I got his ashes, and these are his ashes. And they were his body was taken to Central Point, or not Central Point, but Grants Pass. And so this is what he came in. And he loved this Snuggie that I had. And so I bought it for me, but he ended up wanting it. And so he ended up getting it, and he is cremated with that. So anyway, loved the little guy, and it was so hard. That was the first time I'd ever been with a dog to have him put to sleep, because I didn't with Tony, which I kind of regret that I didn't. But I was just too shattered over that. But he went peacefully, and I was the last person he ever saw. So this was a sad day, and I thought I'd commemorate that by remembering this little guy.